Welcome to the Summit for Wellness podcast, where we help you climb to the peak of your health. And now, here is your host, Brian Carroll.
Are you ready to improve your overall performance? Performance may be translated over into sport and athletic endeavors, but we can still enhance performance for those off the field as well. For instance, a CEO of a company still needs to up their game so they can have clarity in how they grow and run their business. Or a parent might want to improve their performance so they can keep up with their kids or have the energy to help them with their homework. What's up, everyone? I'm Brian Carroll, and I'm here to help people who have an injury or illness that holds them back from enjoying the outdoors. And today we will be discussing performance nutrition and how to optimize the foods you eat to better suit the goals you want to achieve. Our guest, Dr. Geoff Lecovin, helps people to improve their performance levels by focusing on diet, movement, and lifestyle factors. But before we dive into this episode is brought to you by our friends at Athletic Greens. As you'll learn in this episode, if you are eating really well and are getting the highest quality foods you can, then you should be receiving adequate amounts of micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. However, the majority of us can use a little boost, and Athletic Greens powder contains over 75 whole food ingredients to fill in the micronutrient gaps. You can learn more at summitforwellness.com/greens. Now, let's dive right into my conversation with Dr. Geoff Lecovin. Dr. Geoff Lecovin is a chiropractor, naturopathic physician, and an acupuncturist. He specializes in treating musculoskeletal pain and sports injuries by integrating trigger point acupuncture and dry needling, soft tissue release, joint manipulation, corrective exercise, and nutrition. Thank you, Geoff, for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, and I love that you're a chiropractor, a naturopathic physician, and an acupuncturist, which all of those take a lot of schooling and a long time to get into. So can you talk about what got you so interested in the health industry and what made you want to do all that schooling to learn so much?
Sure. So I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and did my undergraduate in exercise science and got into some amateur bodybuilding during that time. And while I was training, I was injured. And a friend of mine talked me into going to see a chiropractor. So I went to see somebody and thought, wow, this is a cool deal. I think I'm going to go this route. And prior to that, I was heading more towards the naturopathic medical route, but I kind of decided to take a sidetrack. So I finished my undergraduate and moved to Los Angeles, went through the chiropractic program there. And about 3/4 of the way into the program, I got more into nutrition. So there was a school, or a program out of the University of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and they ran it out of a hospital in LA on a monthly. So you would go for like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday and go through a master's program in nutrition. So as I was graduating from chiropractic college, I kind of segued into this nutrition program and then was in private practice during the week. And then, so I'm practicing, I have my nutrition master's and I'm trying to integrate that into my practice. And I get an article from my dad from the Vancouver Sun newspaper about this guy doing something called intramuscular stimulation. So I was up in Vancouver, asked if I could take this guy out for lunch. I took him out for lunch. And this thing is called, it's IMS, or it's dry needling. It's a neuroanatomical approach to acupuncture. So rather than focusing on meridians and the traditional Chinese concepts, it was more neuroanatomical, looking at orthopedics, neurology, that kind of thing. And I thought it was a really good kind of segue or a complement to chiropractic. So I called the BC Board of Chiropractors and I said, what can I do in order to practice this dry needling and chiropractic? And they said, you can't, you have to choose one or the other. So then I called the Naturopathic Board and they said, well, if you have the training, then you can practice as both. So I said, all right, I'm moving back to Seattle to go into the naturopathic medical program. So I start the process of becoming a naturopathic physician, and I'm in the interview process, and I go, well, what about the acupuncture? And I say, well, that's a completely another program. So I go for the interview for that program. So I'm at this point in a kind of a dual master's naturopathic program that I powered through in probably kind of speedy time. I did it in about 3 years or just under 3 years. And so I have these tools as a naturopathic doctor, a chiropractor, and acupuncture, and a lot of good tools, but I still didn't really know how to integrate it the way that I thought would be like the most efficient. People would come in, I would do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So an intern came into my practice and he showed me a book one day called Training for a New Millennium. And it was written by a guy named Mike Clark, who is one of the founders of the NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine. And so I looked through this book and I said, this is really interesting material. The assessment process was really cool. The information was really interesting. And I went and started taking all these online NASM classes. I took a live class, and then I saw that they were advertising for instructors. So I went through the instructor process with NASM and started to integrate their model of assessment and treatment, which is really designed for personal trainers. But Dr. Clark was using it with basketball teams like the Phoenix Suns and other professional teams, and really having some spectacular results. So I started to integrate this movement scene, which the assessment, which is an overhead squat, and you break it down using range of motion testing, palpation, manual muscle testing to identify exactly where the pathology is or the dysfunction is. So then I started to apply all my tools. So my dry needling, my manual therapy, my corrective exercise, and I started to get, my results were like unbelievable. So now, this time now, I'm integrating that NASM model with manual therapy. And then I got more into nutrition, and specifically performance nutrition. I went to see Susan Kleiner, who's a performance nutritionist that was one of the founding members of the International Society of Sports Nutrition. And I said, well, I want to learn this stuff. So I went through their certification process, and then subsequently went through more certifications through the International Olympic Committee, and then a company called the Guru Performance. And so I've got these advanced diplomas in sports nutrition. And that's me in a nutshell.
That's a very large nutshell right there. So you were doing bodybuilding before you were getting into all the schooling for chiropractic and whatnot. Is that correct?
I was doing, yeah.
Yeah. So has your idea around the methodologies for bodybuilding changed after you've gone through all this schooling?
Yeah. So, I still, for my own exercise, I prefer to take, into strength training and more hypertrophy, because I believe in terms of metabolic health, it's kind of king, for blood sugar, for longevity. The partner that I work with here, he's into CrossFit. I'm into CrossFix. So we have a good melding here. So, but I really find that strength training is just been good for my own mental health and for my own health. But I like the OPT model with NASM, which is kind of a pyramid where you build on stabilization or core, and then you add strength, and then you add power. So I kind of fit my hypertrophy and strength training within that OPT model.
And then you had mentioned you wanted to learn more about performance nutrition, which is going to be the topic that we're talking about today. So can you define what does performance nutrition encompass?
So it's just it's more of a word for sports nutrition. So basically, I'll use it for athletes who want to perform better, or people who want to gain weight or lose weight, or even just wellness in general. So it's my approach in general with nutrition, or in general with my sports type of practice, is people will come in, they either want to lose weight, they want to gain weight, they want to perform, or they want to be well. And I've tried to use the concepts that a lot of athletes will use in my practice. So like, for example, even with the weight management athletes, people who want to lose weight, who follow traditional types of recommendations, I'll use more of like maybe a bodybuilding or physique style approach. And I find that it's really effective. I mean, you look at the population of physique athletes, and they gain a lot of weight in a short period of time, and then they cut down and they look really good, relatively speaking, depending on the athlete or what you consider to be looking good. But in general, somebody who has a lot of lean body mass and not too big, but even with women, if they have a lot more lean body mass and more muscle, I think that looks good. I think it's healthier. And so by combining strength training, maybe a little bit of high intensity interval training, and the appropriate type of dietary measures, I think that's been really effective for my population of non-athletes or anybody who wants to lose weight. And then again, so people who are trying to gain weight or people who are trying to perform, that's, it's the whole realm of, what an athlete wants or needs in order to be at the peak of their game.
So we're talking a lot about people that are trying to enhance their performance, whether it's on the field, on the court. A lot of times I hear of a lot of principles that people use for athletics can also cross over into like high level CEOs or executives, because they're also kind of playing an upper level game. Do you work with that at all?
Sure, I do.
As well.
I do have some CEOs and more like heads of corporations that come in, and I mean, for the most part, they're trying to get healthy, they're trying to get well, and but they're trying to perform too. So like I look at my performance, also performance in life and performance in health, and how to optimize those things, which from a holistic perspective would encompass their body, their biochemistry, and their mental health.
Right. Yeah. And being the head of a large company or any type of company, their head has to be in the right place to be able to think and be able to grow the business the way that it needs to grow. So let's dive into a little bit the differences for performance, because, if we're thinking about the energy requirements of a sport versus energy requirements of someone trying to lose weight, and in some sports, people are losing weight in order to be ready for their sport. I'm thinking like wrestlers or fighters, boxers, anything like that. Can you break down how do you start to change the nutritional program for them to be able to make sure that they have the energy that they need to perform at the level that they need to perform?
So basically what I do is I'll figure out I go through a pie chart to show them what makes up metabolism. Okay, so if you were to draw a circle and to cut it and to divide it into thirds, so 2/3 or about 60% is considered to be or thought to be due to your resting metabolic rate, your RMR or your BMR, people say sometimes. So basically, these are this is what it takes to keep you alive and run your processes, like your different systems, your nervous system, your brain, so on, like your circulatory system, endocrine system. And so it's based on your gender, your height, your weight, your age, and lean body mass as well. So some of these things are kind of like set in stone. We can't change. We can increase our lean body mass, right, through resistance training. So I kind of gently point that out to an individual that it's important to have more lean body mass because it's going to make you more metabolically active at rest, meaning that at rest, doing nothing, you're going to burn more calories just by having more muscle. So then we have the next 30%, which is TDEE, or total daily energy activity. Total daily energy expenditure. And that's composed of your exercise, right? And what happens after your exercise. So we know that if you do, for example, high intensity interval training, you have what's called the EPOC effect, or excess post oxygen consumption, that occurs after you exercise, where you're actually burning calories for the next 48 to 72 hours just by doing this intense exercise. So imagine like you're pushing on the accelerator of your car, you've got this burning effect, and then it slowly releases, but you're still burning gas as it's releasing. Same kind of thing with this, with EPOC or high intensity interval training. Resistance training has a similar metabolic effect. Generally, steady state type of exercise where you're sitting doing cardio in the fat burning zone, so to speak, for like 45 minutes or so, is going to burn some calories, but is really inefficient. Somebody could go in there and do 45 minutes, maybe burn 400 calories, something like that, steady state activity, and then go to Starbucks and drink a frappe macchiato and drink it all back in a couple of minutes, right? So, and a lot of people have this mental idea that I've earned it. I'm gonna, this idea of like, I went to the gym so I can have this or have that, and that really is it's counterproductive and self-sabotaging. So also part of this energy expenditure is something called NEAT. NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that's actually been thought to be even more of a part for weight management. So things like fidgeting, just taking a little bit extra time to walk to get somewhere, standing up a little bit more. We stand in our clinic most of the time. And so a lot of times people will substitute activities, like they'll do the exercise, for example, and then they won't do anything else for the rest of the day. I've done my exercise, right? And that's not good. So it's important to incorporate NEAT as well. So I incorporate people to get like maybe a fitness monitor, like a Fitbit or something like that, and aim for 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. And that goes a long way for those individuals who are trying to lose weight. And the last 10% is the thermic effect of food. So when we're looking at the thermic effect of food, we're looking at different macronutrients, so that's carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, have an energy cost in their breakdown. So whereas 100 calories of Captain Crunch might have the same value as 100 calories of a piece of steak, the way your body metabolizes these foods is a lot different. There's an energy cost in breaking down that 100 calories of steak, so it's not actually going to translate when it's stored, if it is stored, as 100 calories. So taking it all again to summarize, you've got your resting metabolic rate, you've got total daily energy expenditure, and you've got the thermic effect of food, and that makes up your metabolism. So once we can determine these things, and there's a lot of online calculators that are like, especially for, they use equations. So like Harris-Benedict equation is really popular, a Cunningham equation. So somebody will come in, for example, and I'll plug in their height, their weight, their age, and it'll spit out a number that is roughly their resting metabolic rate. And then we can also use a calculator to figure out their total daily energy expenditure based on what they're performing in a day with their activity. And then that can give us a rough idea of how many calories they're burning in a day. And now, if they want to gain weight, then we're going to add maybe 300 to 500 calories in surplus. If they want to lose weight, we're going to go the other direction. So it's like a teeter-totter of energy balance.
Do you, because you mentioned Fitbits, do you ever follow the amount of calories that are burned based off of a Fitbit or like a Apple Watch or anything like that that's tracking their heart rate all day long? Do you think that's accurate or no?
I think that it's a good place to start, right? Mm-hmm. So it's going to give us some data. The accuracy is questionable, but what else do we have, right? So these are affordable tracking tools. People can't afford to do the gold standards like in calorimetry type of things where you're going into these chambers and they're actually like determining things in a really controlled setting, right? It's not feasible, it's not practical. So these give us some rough ideas. And so let's say you came in and say, okay, Geoff, I want to lose some weight. Okay, let's get a foundation. Let's find out what you're burning in a day. Okay. And then let's create a deficit. Let's put you on a diet. Let's incorporate the exercise. Let's have you track things, with a Fitbit, and let's have you write down what you're eating. And then in a couple of weeks, follow up and see where you're at. And then we can adjust things accordingly.
Awesome. And I like that you make that correlation between Captain Crunch and steak, because I haven't really thought of it in that way. When you have a super hyper palatable food, like a lot of the processed foods where it gives you that initial crunch and then just melts, you're not having to use much of your metabolism to digest that food because it breaks down so quickly. And therefore, you're not getting that extra burn. Whereas, like you said, when you're eating a steak, the metabolism kicks in and it takes a lot more energy to fully digest that steak. So yeah. I think that was a really neat point that you brought up. So let's talk about the macros, since you talked about, or you mentioned that a little bit earlier. We have different sports. We have endurance sports, and we have sports that require much more anaerobic capacity, more sprints and whatnot. So can you talk about different ways to break down someone's macronutrients to help them perform the best at each of those different type of sports?
Sure. So the first thing I always focus on is protein. And before, with the different macronutrients, people would use a percentage. Like you want X percent of carbohydrates, X percent of fats, and so on with protein. And now, So the major organizations that I follow is the International Olympic Committee and the International Society of Sports Nutrition. They come up with position stands, and they've kind of moved away from percentages more to body weight in kilograms. So from a protein perspective, I'm aiming in general for my athletes for about 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. Okay. And that's when you look at a lot of the research kind of points to that as being like an optimum number. If you go a lot much further or higher up, it's not going to do damage to your kidney or bones like was once thought. That's been debunked. It's not going to do that much more, but it might act as an insurance policy. And certainly if somebody was in a calorie deficit, for example, I would encourage them to go up to maybe 2 grams per kilogram body weight to maintain their lean body mass, because you don't want to lose muscle when you're dieting down, right? You want to lose fat. And so in order to maintain your muscle, and you can maintain your muscle and sometimes accrue muscle in a calorie deficit if you are doing the right things, like resistance training and eating the appropriate amount of protein. So that's for protein. For carbohydrate, again, it's based on your activity. So somebody who's doing a skill-based activity, 3 to 5 grams per kilogram body weight would be kind of that level of carbohydrate that they would need, all the way up to maybe 10 to 12 grams per kilogram body weight for somebody who's like doing 2 workouts a day. Maybe they're a triathlete. Maybe they're a professional soccer player that's got a morning workout and an afternoon workout. And they really need that substrate or that carbohydrate in order to fuel and recover from that activity. And then somebody like a strength athlete like myself, probably more like 4 grams per kilogram body weight, depending on where I'm at in my training, if I'm trying to bulk up or if I'm trying to lean out a little bit. I generally kind of stay lean most of the year. But carbohydrate, the idea with carbohydrates these days is more of like a periodization of carbohydrates. So you eat your carbohydrate around your training in order to fuel your activity. And fat is going to come somewhere between 0.6 and 1 gram per kilogram body weight, and focusing on more like essential fats with a good omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, healthy monounsaturated fatty acids from avocado, nuts, that kind of thing, and then limiting the unhealthy fats like the seed oils and canola, that kind of thing, sunflower, safflower.
It seems like a lot of people have a hard time getting enough protein in their diets. Do you have some good tips or strategies people can use to get more protein?
Sure. So it's probably, you want to think maybe around 0.4 grams per kilogram body weight per major meal, right? That's one way of looking at it. I usually start or recommend smoothies as a good way to add some protein in there. So if you're don't have a problem with dairy, then a whey protein isolate would be something good to add. I like Show Me the Whey. It's a concentrate and isolate, so it's more of a whole food. You're getting both parts. It's more, more of the dairy. If somebody is a vegan or a plant-based athlete, then using maybe Vega or some kind of a pea and rice type of protein, you can do that. So you can add that in there, and then your snacks, high protein snacks like jerky or Greek style yogurt or cottage cheese or nut butter on top of a piece of fruit. That works really well. So that kind of thing. So like having maybe small frequent meals where you're all of them have a bit of protein in them to get to that final number that you're aiming for.
And then do you put a lot of emphasis on the micronutrients as well, the vitamins and the minerals?
So if you take care of your energy, right? So think of it in terms of a pyramid, okay? So this performance approach. So the bottom of the pyramid is going to be energy, right? So you want energy. Energy comes from calories, right? And energy is broken down to the currency of energy, which is ATP, right? So getting enough energy, ATP, from your macronutrients, like whole foods for your carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, right, will generally give us sufficient micronutrients, right? So with micronutrients, I'm looking at lots of colorful, plant-based foods with healthy, pasture-raised, wild types of meats, and nuts and seeds in order to encompass all the vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients that you would need for a healthy diet. Now, if you have something called REDS, which is very starting to be more prevalent, REDS stands for relative energy deficiency in sports. So, most people know or have heard of the female triad, where there's disordered eating, amenorrhea, and loss of bone density due to relative energy deficiency. So women or girls who don't have enough calories, whether it's from not wanting to gain weight, or they just can't meet the needs based on their sport or their activity, and the demands and getting that sufficient nutrition in will go into this calorie deficit. They won't have enough energy to not only support their sport, but more importantly, support their health and longevity and well-being. So if somebody doesn't have enough energy, they're obviously going to suffer in terms of their macronutrients and micronutrients. And so you want to make sure that energy is there to support their food. And again, there's to support their sport and health. And there's calculators that you can use to figure out whether you're in a energy activity deficiency type of scenario. And another thing to consider is people who are on we'll call fad diets. And certainly, I don't want to classify veganism as a fad diet, but is a restrictive diet where a lot of times you need to supplement in order to get sufficient micronutrients, such as B12, the essential fatty acids, zinc, vitamin D, maybe calcium. And a lot of times people will turn to processed types of vegetable-based foods that simulate meat products, but are processed, not all that healthy, and again, not balanced enough to get that full array of micronutrients that you would need. The other type of fad diet, I would say, people might get angry with me for these things that I'm saying, but would be ketogenic diet. So here you're missing a whole slew of potential nutrients, and definitely from a performance perspective, that type of eating is not going to help an athlete.
Yeah, and that's there's so many people that jump on to all these different type of diets, and they forget about when you're all in on one or the other, you're gonna lose something somewhere in the middle. So and then you definitely talked about the quality of the food that you're eating also makes a big difference in the micronutrients that you're getting from that food as well. So if people can afford it, the better the quality the food, the better it'll be for their bodies.
Yeah. So again, so you got that energy, right? Then you got the macronutrients, and then the pyramid's getting a little smaller, right? It's coming up like this. So you got the micronutrients, right? So if you think of again, just eating a balanced diet, and just use the acronym JERF, JERF, just eat real food, trying to get your nutrients from whole foods, real foods. Then the next rung would be nutrient timing, and then on the very top is supplements. And most people have it the other way around. They go like this, and they focus on supplements. What pill can I take?
Right.
Really, supplements have been shown to maybe have a 3 to 5% effect on performance, and very few of them are really actually work. And you want to address all the other stuff first.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that with performance, because once you start getting to upper levels of athletics, certain supplements are not allowed because they can be, considered performance enhancing or whatnot. So what should people be looking for in supplements, just in general? And then as you start increasing in your athletic endeavors, what should you be looking out for so that you maintain legality in the sport that you're in?
So there's a company or an organization called Informed Choice or Informed Sport, and they will screen substances for the raw materials, the batch materials, and the actual product themselves. So if a supplement is informed certified, then you're kind of guaranteed that you're not going to get a contaminated product. And so, let's say you're an athlete and you're competing in the Olympics, and you take a product, and unbeknownst to you, it's got a steroid in it, right? and you're drug tested, and they find the steroid in your urine, you're out, right? There's like,
Yep.
so you want to make sure there's no banned substances from contamination. That's like the most important thing. Now, if you're a recreational athlete, maybe you don't care. I mean, personally, I care what goes in my body, so I don't want to, choose questionable types of supplements. So I try to choose products and when I do choose them, and I don't take a whole lot of supplements, but I try to choose products that I know are safe, and products that are individual. Like, I don't like to take products that have a whole bunch of different things in them, because usually they're getting marked up for, say it's got this, that, and the other in it, but there's not enough of anything in order to give you the therapeutic or effect that you're looking for.
And so if someone is just looking at a supplement, is there good ways for them to be able to distinguish between a good quality supplement and one that might not be the best for them?
So, well, first of all, like, I always ask my patients, what's the needs analysis here? Like, okay, you want to take this supplement. What are you trying to accomplish, right? So sometimes people will say, like, I want more energy. I go, well, energy doesn't come from supplements. Energy comes from macronutrients, carbohydrates primarily, and fat. So if you're looking for more energy, getting a B12 shot is not going to push a biochemical pathway any faster unless you're deficient. If you're deficient in something, then you need to take a supplement. So I usually say, like, let's check you for deficiency. Now, I had a trainer once refer me a patient of hers, or a client of hers, who, she said, go see Dr. Geoff, he'll give you a B12 shot. So I said, okay, well, what do you want the B12 shot for? She goes, I've got low energy. Okay, let's look at the history. What do you do? When are you feeling this low energy? I ride horses. I compete riding horses. Okay, tell me about your diet. Well, I don't like to eat because I won't have to go to the bathroom. Okay, so you're not getting enough energy, right? So you want me to give you some B12 shot to give you energy, but your energy is coming from the food. You're not getting enough food. So I tested her B12. Her B12 was fine, just to show her that. And then we started integrating food into her diet in such a way that it wasn't going to be disruptive to her competition, and she started to feel better. And so, so it's like figuring out what are you looking for? What's the need? What are you trying to accomplish, right? And a lot of times you can do it with macronutrients. Like, macronutrients they're substrates for energy, right? They give you energy based on the intensity specifically of your activity, right? So there's something called the respiratory exchange ratio, and that's the interchange or exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen when you're exercising. The slower or the lower this number, the more fat you're burning. So you and I, sitting here right now, are preferentially burning fat, right? Hopefully, unless we're insulin resistant or have some kind of type 2 diabetes or something of that nature, where our insulin's not working well. As we start to pick up the activity, if we want to go walk for a fast walk, then we're going to burn a combination of carbohydrates and fats, and then the higher your intensity, you're going to burn more carbohydrate, right? That's why a ketogenic diet doesn't work well for something like CrossFit or somebody who's doing like sprinting or intermittent fast types of activities. But so, like, from a supplement perspective, I might supplement carbohydrates, right? I also might not supplement carbohydrates, meaning I might have somebody train low. So this idea that if you train low, you're signaling your body through the absence of substrate to go down one pathway. So training in a carbohydrate depleted state or a glycogen depleted state will stimulate AMPK and PGC1 alpha, which are molecular signaling molecules, which will cause mitochondrial biogenesis. So what does that mean? You're going to have more mitochondria. As a endurance athlete, the more mitochondria you have, the more aerobic capacity potentially you're going to have. So if you use this training low type of approach a couple times a week, not every time, and then compete high, not high, but high, you know what I'm saying, right? Glycogen state, then you're going to have more mitochondria and more glycogen available to use in these mitochondria. You're going to have a performance enhancement type of ability by just manipulating your macronutrients.
Yeah, that is super fascinating. And that's getting a little bit a little bit more deep into how you can play with the macros and showing people that the way that you play with the macronutrients and what you do with them can definitely enhance the performance, which is what a lot of these athletes are trying to do. So, like you said, it doesn't necessarily need to be a supplement that pushes them over the edge. It can just be playing around with the macronutrients a little bit.
Now,
So,
when you get back,
go,
sorry, you were asking about like other vitamins and things like that, or from a supplement perspective, right? So a supplement can be a vitamin, it can be a mineral, right? And again, I'm going to base those on whether I think they're in a deficiency state based on their diet or potentially some blood tests, right? There was a feed on the so I'm on a bunch of Facebook feeds for the International Society of Sports Nutrition and a couple other nutrition groups. And somebody asked a question on the feed today, how should I dose antioxidants for health and exercise performance? And so specifically vitamin C and vitamin E. And so I kind of got on there in between patients and I said, if you're looking for optimum health and optimum performance, using pharmacological or supraphysiological doses of antioxidants can be counterproductive to those objectives. Because when you exercise, you're creating some reactive oxygen species, so some oxidants, right? Those are signaling molecules for something to happen, repair or an adaptation, right? If you take an antioxidant, you're going to block that. So it's counterproductive from that perspective. If you're inflamed because you have an injury, and you take an antioxidant, you're potentially blocking your body's ability to heal by blocking that pathway. So if somebody was an athlete that was playing like in the Olympics, for example, or they had multiple sports or like a tournament, I'd say go ahead, take the antioxidants, try and reduce the inflammation as much as you can to limit the tissue damage, during this time. But if you're trying to get healthy and get the most out of your exercise, then get your antioxidants from food, not from a supplement.
Got it. And so if we're taking a look at your pyramid, is there a layer on the pyramid specifically for hydration, or should that just be in there no matter what and a focus for every single athlete?
Yeah, so definitely, if you were to, take that pyramid, I would have a thin line up the entire, aspect of the pyramid.
Side
for hydration, right? Hydration, if you are, as little as 2% dehydrated, your performance and health is gonna suffer. So, I ensure that, so you want to try and prevent things. You don't want to overhydrate, right? Because that can affect your electrolytes. So hydration is really important. Basically, if you're in a sport that's under an hour, water is just fine. Once you start to get more or over an hour and then under conditions where you're in altitude or heat, then you want to start to add sodium and maybe a little bit of carbohydrate in order to maintain your glycogen stores and also to maintain your hydration, because you're going to suffer.
We live here in Washington where it seems like everybody's just drinking gallons of coffee all day long. So do you see a significant increase in people being dehydrated around here, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think there's also some question about whether, there's going to be diuresis with anything that you drink, right? So is coffee like a harmful diuretic? I think that also has been something that's been kind of debunked to a certain extent. And so I would say coffee is probably, or caffeine is one of my favorite ergogenic aids because it's very well researched. It's not harmful unless you start taking really high doses and are working out in the heat. Then there's been some reports and cases of heart attacks and strokes and things like that. But these are people who are not paying attention to their body. They are dehydrated and they are stressing their body to in a harmful way. But so I say from a hydration perspective, certainly you want to try and keep your urine clear. That's one way, so it's looking at your kind of a rough idea of your specific gravity or your the concentration in your urine. So that can be helpful. If you're drinking too much, and you have spasms, or you're washing out your electrolytes, that can be a problem as well. So it's not good to overhydrate. It's not good to underhydrate. You want to find you want to have the Goldilocks effect, just whatever's just right in order to meet the needs of your activity and health.
So if you're working with a female athlete, do you have to change their meal plan throughout the month to follow alongside their menstrual cycles, or is that a little too high level for most athletes?
So there is a diet called the menstrual lean diet, and it's a study if you wanted to go to Google Scholar, for example. And Google Scholar is a great resource for those people who haven't heard of it. So basically there's a search engine that takes you to all kinds of studies. So you could, for example, plug in sports nutrition, performance enhancement for sprinting, and you can narrow it down to a certain timeline. So you get all these studies, and sometimes you'll just get the abstract, sometimes you'll get the entire study, depending whether it's open access or not. But so that menstrual lean study is a cool way of looking like how do women change throughout their cycle. So certainly, like in a woman in her childbearing years, there is going to be changes depending on whether she's in the follicular phase or luteal phase of her cycle, whether she's menstruating or ovulating. There's going to be a need for more nutrition in order to support the extra metabolism that's involved in her metabolic rate, so to speak. So and I would say, like, you almost want to prepare for this before it happens. So before the onset of menstruation, as long as you're not pregnant, but like, let's say that you're going through that luteal phase, you're a week out before menstruation, and that you're going to be bleeding, you're going to lose iron, you're going to have increased needs. You want to probably increase your energy, your carbohydrates, your iron rich types of foods in order to support the process, as well as any kind of sports that you might be doing at that time.
Awesome. And then as kids are growing up, do you have to make special considerations for them as well?
Yeah.
Or after a certain point, are they able to just kind of follow suit what adults follow?
Yeah. So kids are not just little adults. They have different, they have different needs for the way they handle sweat. And so hydration, they are, their requirements for sleep are different. And, you basically, for my athletes right now, for example, who are they're adolescents, or they're going through puberty, so they have to deal with that extra growth that's required. So they're going to need more calories, they're going to need more carbohydrates, they're going to need more more protein in order to support not only that process, but in addition to whatever sports that they're doing to support that.
And then if you were to create a meal plan for an athlete, or if someone wanted to create a meal plan for an athlete, can you give us some general considerations we should take to create that meal plan?
Sure. Okay. So what I'll do is I like the healthy plate, right? So the healthy plate, you're going to have half a plate. You're going to divide the plate in half. Half the plate is going to be colorful vegetables, fruits, and then the other half you're going to divide between protein, so some kind of healthy protein source, like I said, pasture raised, wild game, eggs, that kind of thing. And the other portion is going to be some kind of healthy fiber type. So it could be from a breakfast perspective, it could be oatmeal, it could be some kind of multi-grain type of toast. I've been into this Happy Camper toast these days that comes out of Portland. It's like a Happy Camper. This is a nutrient dense bread. Could be quinoa, with berries, things like that in it. And then I'm going to manipulate this plate based on the day. So let's say you have an athlete that's got a rest day. So they don't need as much starch, right? They're resting, right? So that's what we're talking about, periodizing your carbohydrates, right? So that part might become a little bit smaller, and you're going to increase your vegetables and increase your protein. Let's say they're in a calorie deficit. Same might hold true. Let's say that person has a big endurance activity the next day. They have a rowing meet. the night before, that plate is going to be filled with carbohydrates, brown rice or pasta, quinoa, things like that. I'm going to want to make sure they have a full muscle and liver glycogen that they're going to bed with, and then in the morning they're going to top it off with more carbohydrate. So you're going to play it's going to be the template, right? It's a template that kind of describes like what are the basics, and then you manipulate the amount on each portion of that plate based on the needs of the athlete.
Awesome. Well, this has been extremely just information packed. Do you have any final things that you want to touch on before we wrap up?
The basics are just eat real food, follow that pyramid, and just to reiterate, you want to focus on getting adequate energy, and then with the macronutrients, get your protein set first, periodize your carbohydrates around your activity, get in healthy fats, and then colorful plant-based foods with healthy meats in order to meet your micronutrients. Time your nutrition around your activities, or time them if you're trying to create some sort of metabolic adaptation, for example, like we talked about training low. And then consider supplements once you have all the stuff below in check. And then with those supplements, just know that there are a few that are effective, but based on your specific sport, right? So like if somebody wants to increase their lean body mass and or a sprinter, then something like creatine monohydrate, beta alanine, beetroot juice, these are things that can be helpful to do that. If you're somebody that's just looking for general health, then I would say try and get things through your food. And then again, caffeine, like I mentioned, is another good supplement, but I'd like to get that through coffee as well.
Awesome. So just eat real food is the big takeaway here. Well, people can find you at Northwest Integrative Medicine Clinic, which is in Kirkland, Washington, I believe. Is that correct?
Downtown Kirkland, yeah.
And your website is drgeofflecovin.com, and that's Geoff for Jeff. Is there anywhere else people can find you? Or are you on social media or anything?
I am. Well, I've written a lot of blogs. So if you go to my website, there's a lot of blogs on the stuff that we just talked about. I've written for the NASM, so their blog. I've got a lot of nutrition articles and exercise, fitness types of articles. And that would be it. So I am on Facebook. I don't tweet a whole lot on Twitter. I am on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know there's a lot of athletes that have been asking about different ways to increase their performance, so this will be extremely helpful for them.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Geoff does a great job at breaking down nutrition into actionable steps to improve your performance. And if you heard his brief intro at the end of the last episode, the acronym SPEED is a great place to start. It stands for sleep, psychological stressors, environment, exercise, and diet. So after listening to this episode, what steps are you going to test out for your own performance gains? I would love to hear about what you have tried. So if you go onto Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player, you can talk about your results in the reviews on those platforms. Are you ready to take your health to the next level? If so, our health programs are designed to help you make lasting changes to your health. With our habit-changing process, we walk alongside you on your health journey, making sure that you are successful and feel like the best version of you. To learn more, go to summitforwellness.com/ready. Next week, we have Megan Fritz of Never Stop Moving coming onto the show to talk about rock climbing and how it builds connection, mental focus, and is a fun way to get exercise in while testing your own limits in a safe environment. So let's go learn a little bit about Megan. I am here with Megan Fritz. Hey, Megan, what is one unique thing about you that most people don't know?
I'm afraid of heights, even though I'm a rock climber, and I am still struggling with the fear of falling on sport climbing.
And what is the tallest route that you've ever done?
Oh, I probably will say wherever I may roam at Smith Rock State Park. I don't know the height. It's about 5 pitches.
So you've been quite a ways off the ground, even though you're afraid of heights.
Yeah, around 300 feet or so.
Wow, good for you.
Thank you.
So what will we be learning about in our interview together?
Yeah, so you're going to learn what rock climbing is, how you can do it and have fun regardless of your age, gender, size, strength, how none of that matters, and how it can have a positive mental and physical impact on your life.
And how has climbing changed your life?
Climbing has definitely had a huge impact on me in more ways than I could even say in 5 minutes. But it's given me outlets to deal with stress. It's given me a way to stay in shape and have fun while doing that. It's allowed me to solve problems and think critically and outside the box as to how to complete a climb. It's given me so many friendships and allowed me to trust and really have a sense of partnership with a lot of people. It's given me motivation to go outside and has definitely allowed me to overcome my fears, such as heights, and what I'm capable of achieving.
That will be a really fun episode to listen to next week.